Like genuinely ask people, how are you doing? I think a lot of us just do that just to just chit chat because that's just how you greet people. But genuinely ask, how are you doing? And be compassionate, be empathetic, show that you actually care.
Welcome to Tad Voices. I'm Nick.
And I'm Lawson, and we're friends and former teammates who are here to talk about mental health.
We are by no means experts in this field, nor is this a substitute for professional help, but we can promise open and vulnerable conversations that highlight the strength of some amazing people who have decided to share their story with us.
Talk, share, help. And thanks for listening.
We now welcome on Jenna Pettit. Jenna is a mental health advocate empowering individuals to combat personal challenges throughout daily life. She is a constant presence on her Instagram page at Jenna Nicole, where she has over 22,000 followers. She is always fighting the stigma against mental health while now studying marriage and family therapy. We are so pleased to have you on, Jenna. Thank you for being here.
Hi guys, I'm thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Jenna, how's everything out in California? What have you been up to, and how are you coping with this whole COVID outbreak?
I am bored. And it doesn't help that like I work in the school system. So I mean, I'm off for the summer right now anyways, but things are starting to open back up and now they're closing down again. So it's just interesting to see the waves of, things that are happening. I'm sad because I want to go to the gym and, gyms are still kind of struggling because you got to work out outside and stuff like that. So, but I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging out with my corgi, Finley. He's really cute.
Dogs are the ones that really benefit from all of this, right? They get a lot of human interaction.
Oh my gosh, yes. I don't know what he's going to do when I go back to work. I feel bad. So.
Well, we'd like to jump right in. And first, again, thank you for coming on. And we want to open up the floor to you right now to sort of take us through your mental health story and how you became an advocate, for change and understanding.
Yeah. So I have to talk about my Crohn's disease to kind of get to the point of mental health. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the age of 21 in 2016. And then I was hospitalized for a week. I was told I needed to go on life-saving medications for like the rest of my life. And then that was a lot for me because for most people, like they're just used to going to the doctor, right? And then you take antibiotics until, you have to stop them. So just the thought of having to take meds for the rest of my life was a hard concept for me to grasp. Not to mention, I am now trying to manage a disease that I didn't even know about. So I started sharing my journey with Crohn's on Instagram, which attracted a community. The Crohn's community is awesome. I was trying my best to be optimistic but relatable with my posts. At this time, I was also going through stages of grief. So if you've ever had like a health complication, you're grieving like the death of your health pretty much. So which kind of kickstarted my journey into like, who am I and what is my purpose, and a lot of introspection. So when you kind of ask those kinds of questions, it stirs up a lot of anxiety and depression. And then in the span of 3 years, I had built up antibodies to biologics. So biologics are these shots you have to give yourself to suppress your immune system from attacking you pretty much. And I built up antibodies to one, and then I had an allergic reaction to another. And so I started to look into holistic and integrative options, looking into ways of how to heal my body. I was also talking to other cronies on Instagram who were trying to get off meds through holistic medicine. And one of the girls I was talking to mentioned she was trying to deal with her emotional baggage along with holistic medicine. And then she was trying to get off a biologic. Because your flare-ups can be triggered by your emotional state. So you kind of talk to people that have autoimmune disorders. I don't want to like generalize people, but I know for me and a lot of people I talk to, we deal with a lot of stress, right? And we're swallowing our stress and we're not dealing with it. And then it's coming out in physical symptoms. So I never approached my Crohn's disease from a mental health standpoint. So not to mention, ever since I was a kid, I've been hypersensitive to people's emotions and my surroundings. So once I was diagnosed with Crohn's, that's when I really started to be more conscious of, oh, like this is what they're feeling. Like they're anxious right now or they're depressed. So before, like, I wasn't really aware of what was going on. So I kind of grew, I think it was because I grew a deeper like state of empathy after my diagnosis, because I went through the stages of grief. But anyways, I thought, wow, I do have a lot of emotional baggage, since I came from a dysfunctional family, and I also wanted a better sense of why am I picking up on people's feelings and surroundings and stuff like that. So I started to go to therapy, and it definitely helped. I was definitely holding on to a lot of pain. I was just swallowing. So I believe stress is a huge trigger for my Crohn's. As mentioned, I was trying integrative and holistic medicine at this point, which didn't really work out the way I intended it to. I think my body was just too far damaged from all the stress and flare-ups. So it works for some people, but it wasn't super amazing for me, like the holistic and integrative approach. So eventually I tried stem cell therapy, which has been amazing for me. I was also able to get off my Crohn's meds, but so I've been med-free for 2 years, which is awesome. And I haven't really had any flare-ups, but what was left was all of this emotional baggage that I was trying to come to terms with. So for the longest time, my emotional state was coming out in my physical symptoms. So I was getting distracted with the physical stuff. But now that I haven't really had flare-ups, I've had to come to terms with a lot of things I suppressed. So which made me go through a huge depression, and I usually struggle with anxiety. And the reason for that, which took me years to understand, was I didn't want to reflect on all the pain, right? Because that's what stirred up the depression. So every human just wants to be happy, right? We want to be appreciated. We want to be seen. We want to be shown unconditional love. So how I became a mental health advocate was through sharing my story with Crohn's, and also just being an empath, right? Picking up on people's feelings and understanding there's something wrong. I've also always gravitated towards professions or hobbies that allow me to help others. So I was like a group fitness instructor for a while. I share my story openly about Crohn's and my mental health struggle and stuff like that. So the mental health aspect has been there since I started my journey with Crohn's on Instagram. However, I would say over the past 2 years, I have focused more on the mental health and how it affects our bodies, right? No one wants to lose your health. Like, you don't know what you have until it's gone, pretty much. And so I focus on ways to release stress or pain that we may be feeling. So my messages have definitely gotten more deep and introspective over the course of a few years. So, yeah.
Well, first off, I just want to commend you and say thanks so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us, and also with your Instagram following too. And I think it's pretty clear how valuable your message is, right? With 22,000 followers. So I'll say thank you for that. But the one interesting point that I kind of want to touch on, and I think it's really interesting and really important, but feeling good mentally in order to kind of feel good physically. And it's really amazing how closely those, both our mind and our bodies are intertwined. And so kind of going off that, you mentioned experiencing depression and anxiety. I just kind of wanted to ask, what did you find really help you through those difficult moments?
Hobbies, talking to someone that understands what I'm going through, having a community I could talk to. Even therapy helped. Cognitive behavioral therapy, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that approach. That's super helpful. So,
and I think that's all fantastic. I guess my follow-up question would be, what would you have done differently?
what would I oh, that's a good question. What would I have done differently to deal with my depression? I don't know. I mean,
Or maybe I should ask that in a different way and say, were there at any moments where you weren't feeling great and you were sort of stuck in a
yeah.
sort of a hamster wheel, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden something happened and things changed, right? And you were feeling great again, feeling good again.
I think what you're talking about is splitting. So splitting is like black and white thinking, and like especially when you're in like depressed, right? You go into this state of like, wow, I'm whatever, right? Whatever you want to call yourself. We call ourselves really negative things when we're depressed and we can't see the light, right? We can't see the positivity. So I guess what if like to answer your question on what I could have done differently is, work on, and this is why cognitive behavioral therapy is so effective with depression, is because it's schemas or it's ideas that we're telling ourselves over and over again, right? So working on trying to think about the good things that are happening in my life, right? Instead, like when you're depressed, you're just focusing on all this bad energy, all this bad stuff that's happening to you. So I guess it's not easy, right? Even when you're in that depressed state, it's not like you could just think a happy thought and it's just like, oh well, everything's great. But it's work, right? It's work on, well, this was a good thing that happened today. Well, this was a little good thing that happened today, So I think that's an area I could have worked on, and it's not something that comes easy, and that's definitely something I learned through cognitive behavioral therapy too.
And another question here. Obviously, the statistics surrounding mental illness are staggering, and I believe it is it 1 in 5 people in their lifetime will experience some sort of mental illness. But often a lot of those people, what can be so difficult is really having these conversations and talking about their struggles. And I think what really impressed us about your story and really why we wanted to bring you on was because you've been so vulnerable and you've been open, and that's tremendously valuable to others. But I was just kind of wondering, was there a certain maybe moment or experience that you had where you're like, okay, I really want to share my story. I want to be open to others. I want to be honest.
Okay, so I did not want to do it. And so this is going back to my Crohn's disease, right? And if it how do I explain this? So going back to my Crohn's, and then I'll get to the mental health, because there's like two different aspects to it. So with the Crohn's, I didn't want to share it. I was like, this is dealing with my gut. That's embarrassing, right? Same with kind of depression. Like you don't want to share your thoughts because you're afraid of what people will think of you, right? Being judged. So I didn't want to do it. And it took me about a week, and I was talking to one of my mentors at the time, and she's like, you should definitely share your story because you have a lot to say, and I think you can help a lot of people. Now, the mental health aspect, that has taken me years to share so openly on my Instagram, right? Because there's so many stigmas with it. And what's funny is even when I do like posts about my mental health, I still have my mom who will message me and she's like, why are you posting this? I'm like, you know what? I don't care, because I just got like 10 messages thanking me and saying I'm relatable and, I'm helpful. And so the more I share, the more I'm just surprised that people can relate to my thoughts or, struggles that I've been through. So, and that's what I love, right? I love the fact that I'm helping others just by being relatable or sharing something that I've gone through. So, yeah.
And I think that's something that's so true, right? We kind of notice there's like a little bit of this generational gap where maybe the older generations are not quite as open to having these discussions. And I think that's something, that, our generation has done. I think there's still probably a lot of work to do,
Yeah.
but I think that's a good point that you made. And it's really important that here we kind of keep, pushing that forward and keep having these discussions and kind of being open to being vulnerable like that in order to help others.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that, you know. So I I my mom thinks of like, you know, Facebook as like, you know, you post all your happy things and, you know, like we're just gonna show the happy stuff. And I'm like, I want like stuff that I can relate to. You know, what is social media made for? It's made to be relatable. You to like for you to connect with someone else, right? So that's the aspect that I take from social media is being able to connect with others. I don't want to look fake. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. We're all human. So if I have a message to share that I think is going to help others, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So, yeah.
And that's sort of what got us here, right? Like nobody wanted anything shared that was difficult, right? Like it was easier when you went to like Thanksgiving dinner and it's like the one, you know, person in the family that brought up, like stirred something up that, oh, we're not supposed to talk about that. It's like, well, maybe things would have been easier if we did talk about that a long time ago.
My goodness, don't even get me started.
And I will say that you are going to help a lot of people because I'm relating to you more than I thought I was going to. And I think, you know, you are helping a ton of people. And I, you know, going into it as somebody who's also, you know, struggled with mental health challenges, I guess where I'd like to sort of steer this conversation a little bit would be, you know, what was your support system like? And, you know, obviously you said that it was difficult for you to initially share your story and you had a mentor that sort of pushed you in that direction. But if you could take us through sort of, were you sharing stuff with one friend, a couple friends, a sibling, cousin, something like that?
Yeah, so I had a friend, like my biggest depression that I had, like other ones, little ones, like I kind of like, you know, worked through, especially when I was going through stages of grief, I realized what I was going through. But this big one that I had, which was like a year and a half ago too. He's actually my boyfriend. He was going through a depression and I was going through a depression. And I knew I could, he was my friend at the time, and I knew I could talk to him about what was going on because he could relate, right? So we could relate to each other on what was going on, and we kind of like gravitated towards each other because we wanted to help each other, right? We're both very compassionate and loving and empathetic. So we were like, we were there for each other because we were both struggling with depression. So that was one way I was getting help. Communities on IG, right? I have like my feed. I'm very like specific about how I want my feed, right? I don't want to put things out there that are going to make me feel bad about myself. And also you know, I don't, how do I want to explain this? Like I didn't want to commit suicide. I just wanted the pain to go away, right? I just wanted this to stop. So that's why I was like, you know, I need to go to therapy. You know, I was pushing myself to go to the gym and doing stuff like that to try to alter my consciousness. So
Were you and your friend, now boyfriend, pushing each other to those points? Or do you think that if there was like, did you do research on your own and sort of find it? Or like, what was your process like that like?
Yeah. So again, just like me being kind of an empath and kind of going through a lot of things in my life, I can pull from a lot of, I guess, situations that I've been in, right? Or feelings that I had to empathize with him, right? And so for him, to me, like, you know, me talking to him and just telling him how I feel, I at the time was feeling trapped. I was feeling trapped and I wanted to get out of my situation and I couldn't. And so he was like kind of someone that I could talk to. Yeah. So I don't know if I really looked up resources. Like we didn't do stuff like that. It was just more from pulling from situations, listening to each other. Because sometimes if you have nothing to say, just be a listener, right? Just be a listener and just be like, hey, I'm here for you. Like that's just something that like I needed, is to know that somebody cared about me, right? I have purpose, or like I have meaning to this person, right? So that was helpful. Just listening, he would listen, you know, and if he couldn't relate, which I mean sometimes he did, he would just listen, right? And just say, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. So sometimes that's all that is needed, but I mean, obviously it's not in everything, but it's just nice to know someone is there for you. So you can
Yeah,
be your yourself, right? You can share your dark thoughts, your raw thoughts that are going on, and people are not going to judge you and think you're crazy. So yeah.
And I think it's something like a lot of times people don't realize how far like a simple text message can go, or just reaching out to somebody. Just that in itself is something that I think is so valuable to somebody. And a lot of that is kind of what we base, kind of what we're doing here at TAD, is just being able to share these stories and offer resources and allow friends to kind of help friends, right, and learn more about mental health. So I think you really kind of hit the nail right on the head with that.
Awesome.
And thank you for all that. I mean, the sort of the follow-up question that I would have to that is, now that you've had all of these experiences and you're, seemed very educated in a lot of these subjects, is if somebody were to come to you now, how would you talk, or how would you ask somebody that you see daily, that you see sort of maybe not being themselves, how would you talk to them about their mental health?
That's something that happens to me kind of a lot in the workplace, because I'll walk into a room and I can pick up right away if someone is depressed. I feel it right away. And it depends on the kind of relationship I have with that person, right? I can't get too deep, but often, I could pick up if someone's anxious and stuff like that. So I'll be like, how are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? How is everything going? And we'll chit chat. And I don't know exactly what I do, but this happens a lot. Like, with friends, coworkers, is people I think feel comfortable around me. So they kind of share with me what's going on, So I just feel like if with your friends, I know if my friends, if I always check in with my friends. I usually text them weekly. And if I pick up something is off, like maybe they don't text back, or I notice that they're kind of absent, then I'm going to check on them. Like, hey, what's going on? I care about you. Is everything okay? And sometimes it's not, sometimes they're just like, oh, I'm super busy, So I think that's important. I think it's important to, what is the right word I'm looking for? I just, like genuinely ask people, how are you doing? I think a lot of us just do that just to chit chat, because that's just how you greet people. But genuinely ask, how are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? And be compassionate, be empathetic, show that, you actually care. Don't just be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little, you get what I'm trying to say, I think.
Yeah, a little more in depth than just kind of a hey, what's up? But like, how have you been lately, or even like, how's your day going, or how just how's everything in your life? And I think that's definitely a good point. But just to kind of wrap things up, I think one question that Nick and I prepared for you in advance: what does mental well-being look like to you?
Being introspective, coming to terms with things that you don't want to come to terms with, right? Because what happens is when we don't come to terms with things, we end up projecting, and sometimes we're not really aware of what we're doing, but we're projecting that negative part of ourselves onto other people. Okay, so I know it was hard. It's still hard. It's a journey. It's a journey of figuring yourself out. What is your meaning? What is the purpose, right? What is your meaning and purpose? Find that, right? And think about things that are going to give you joy, right? Doing hobbies that bring you joy, having relationships with people that bring you joy. So I think those are that's what's helped me, is being introspective. And at at times that I feel stressed or depressed, going to things that I know are going to bring me joy. So I think that's really what mental health is, because when we don't deal with that emotional baggage, that's going to come out at some point in your life. It just will. It just will. So it's going to be hard, but in the end, you'll have a better sense of yourself, right? And what your purpose is, so.
Jenna, thank you so much. I think this has been fantastic. And like I said, I know you're going to help people. I know that you're going to relate to people. And, again, thank you for your time today.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.